Okay, now for your logo, you're going to have the water go across, change the color of the logo, and possibly leave the screen. So I'm going to do both scenarios. All right, so this will be the water coming on. Okay, now I don't want to fill, so I click the word fill, not the actual color. That will change the color. I do want to stroke, so I'm clicking the word stroke. I'm using a solid. Okay, I want to make sure that it's wide enough to cover the type. There we go. If I need to change the color, then I click on the color swatch. So that's what I would do for fill if I want to change the color. I'll give this we'll just stick with this for now. I'll put this beneath my type. So I've got my water and I've got my type. Well, this is the water, this is the type. I'm going to rename this just so we can see what's going on. I'll call it water behind text. Okay, so let's say the logo is going to change. This will work for text or whatever you want to place. Alpha mats will work with anything. I'm going to duplicate the text because that's what we're going to be changing. And I'm going to make the character, I'm going to make the color of it like a dark bluish purple so it stands out from what's coming on. So now it's the motion. We've got the concept going. For my water layer, I'm going to add trim paths. So I go to add, trim paths. I could also get to the add button down here by twirling down my arrow and then add right there. Now, animating on, I'm either going to use start or end depending upon the direction I want. If I change the start, it'll come on from the right-hand side of the screen. I want it to go left to right. So I'm going to see what happens when I move the end slider. This is what I want. So I'm going to animate the end keyframe, the stopwatch. So I click the stopwatch to start. And let's just say about here. Then I'm going to move this up to 100. So I only have two keyframes, 0 and 100. And it's going from left to right just like I want. So if I duplicate this and use it as my alpha mat, this will keep the logo on because there's something around it at all times. So I can keep that if I want. So I'm going to duplicate this. You know what? Let's work on the motion. So I'm going to select both keyframes, hover over, right click, easy ease, use my speed graph, click my little thing to stretch it out right down here. Always make sure you're in the black arrow select tool, not the pen tool. Now remember, you don't want to move the yellow square. It's the yellow circle on the end. So I'm going to have it slow into, and see that moved a little bit. There we go. I'm going to have it slow into. So it's speeding up and then slowing down into that last keyframe. So now it's got a little bit more deliberate movement to it. I'm going to zoom out on my timeline here with my little mountain range icon. So now, when I duplicate this, I select the layer and hit Control D, and I put it above the blue text that's going to be revealed. Remember, think of it, you put a mask on top of your head. So what's going to be masking it goes on top. I go to the layer beneath. Here's my modes and switches. These are the switches. I click switches and modes right here. And now I've got track mat. So you want to make sure you see track mat. You don't see track mat here? Now you've got your track mat. So here's what I'm going to be using as my mask. I go to the layer beneath it, alpha mat. So now, as the water paints on, when it interacts with the type, it's changing it. This is where the alpha mat is hitting. That's what's changing it. And we're not drawing it off. It's just two keyframes, on and off. So now, if I draw off the water, let me zoom out. Let's just say I want to start drawing off right about here, because it'll still be covering the logo. We're still good because we've got this one not drawing off. So I drew it on with the end. So whichever direction you're going, it's always the opposite. If I started with start, I draw it off with the end. Since I started with the end, I'll draw it off with the start. So I click my stopwatch at the start and go to where I want it to start completely drawing itself off. So you want it to at least hit the screen edge, the edge of the screen. I'll slide this down a little bit more so it starts a little later. About there. And then I change the end stopwatch. So this is going from 0 to 100 drawing on. And this one is going from 0 to 100. Let me check on the bottom one. The bottom is going from, yeah, so they're both going from 0 to 100. I'm using end to draw it on and off, start to draw it off. So you see it start coming on the screen. And right about here, you're going to start seeing it draw itself off behind it. And my logo stayed the same color because this one up here does not draw off. It stays on the whole time. But we're using it to mask the text, so you see it stay on the way you want it. Now, I'm going to mess around with the look of this real quick. We've already got the clean one that's used as our alpha matte. So if I go into my effects and type roughen edges right there, we'll drag it onto the layer I want it. This is the one that you're seeing not being used as a matte. Already you're starting to see the edges look more liquidy. And you can mess around with it however you want by adjusting your parameters. Edge sharpness will either make it look like smoke, nice and soft, or a crisper edge if that's what you want. It's all up to you as the designer. The scale, see it's starting to look more like spray paint there at that moment. That's all up to you. That's going to be the scale of what's influencing it. Now, evolution. I'm going to keyframe this. So I click the watch. I'm going to give it 3 full rotations. The first circle is complete rotations. The other one is for specific degrees. So let's see what it looks like now. See, now it's already starting to get a little bit finer. I can also use this. I can put a map on here. So if I make a new layer, I'm going to use a solid. Solids can be used for effects. I'm going to make it, color doesn't matter, I'm just going to make it red so it stands out in my layers. All right. Now for here, if I do Fractal Noise and add some noise, now we've got some noise. Let's turn it smooth. We'll crank up the contrast. Ooh, do not like that. Let's try dynamic. That's a little bit better. Up the contrast. What this is going to do is I want more contrast. This is going to make it look more like water bits. You'll see how it's going to influence it. I'm going to animate this going from left to right, which is basically how the offset turbulence, how the effect is going on the screen. There we go. So I did that with my transform and offset turbulence. So you see it's pushing over to the same direction as the water. Now I'm going to do a stopwatch on my evolution as well. I'm going to give this 3 full rotations as well. And let's see the scale. If I crank up the scale, let me make it smaller. See now, the scale of this is going to influence the way the water will look. So I'm going back to, let me see, where am I at? Am I here? Nope, those are the other tutorials. I'm right here. Okay. I'm going to put this on the bottom and hide it. Any grayscale images can be used as maps. So here's my water that you see on the screen. Here's my rough and edges effect on it. So if I do a displacement map, I put it on that water, and I choose a layer, displacement map layer, red solid, because this is where I put the effect on. You can see it already starting to move this around, and we can choose what's going to affect it. The alpha, the luminescence, the hue. I'll just do alpha for this. And then on top of that, I'm also going to put a Turbulent Displace. Let's see what we want for there. Okay. Just change the amount, change this. No, I don't want to do too much for the size or the amount. You don't want to get too crazy with that. Let's try Turbulent Smoother. Okay, for this, I'm going to change the evolution as well. I'm going to click the stopwatch for it, go forward. We'll give that 3 full rotations just so it's all consistent. Now let's see that hitting. That's looking good. I could also duplicate this, change the color of it. I'll make it a little bit lighter. We're going to be going over this in another lesson in the class. I'm just showing you this because it relates to. So now I've got 2 different shades for the water as it's drawing on. Those are just some ways that you can dress up the animation. And I will see you in class next week. Best of luck with your project.